Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Country Education Partnership's free professional development online program, the Autumn Series. My name is Gary Allen, and I'm delighted to be hosting the session today. The Country Education Partnership acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the land, rivers, sea, people, ancestors, and spirits. I'm speaking to you from the land of the Gadabanood people of the Eastern Maar, and I pay my respects to the elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, particularly any who may be joining us today. Today is the second of 4 sessions in the Autumn Series, and the topic of today's session is the value of connectiveness in the rural learning environment, something that I maintain is one of the greatest advantages of CEP membership. It is now my pleasure to introduce the CEO of the Country Education Partnership, Mark McClay, to provide an update on CEP activities. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Gary. Lovely to be here. Really looking forward to today's sessions. And I was remiss last week to pass my thanks to Brendan Ryan, who has filled the role that Gary's doing for the last 3 years. And Brendan has decided to focus on his lawn bowls career at this stage. Gary's had a very successful lawn bowls career and lawn bowls administration and decided to need a break. So he's joining us here, and as a life member of CEP, we're very excited to have him on board. Some really exciting work in the CEP space. For the first time ever, we are heading into the world of business partner relationships. So I look forward to the next few weeks with sharing the information about our new business partners. But I just want to say CEP are very specific around the criteria for business partners. They need to be companies that service the entire state and rural areas, and wouldn't take away local services or local providers. That's really important to us. A lot of small towns, there are local providers, so we're trying to pick businesses that wouldn't necessarily be in a lot of smaller rural locations. So yeah, we're not just tagging on with anyone, fast food companies or anyone who's willing to fork over some dough. We do put a lot of thought into it. So it's exciting for CEP space. It's brand new. And we look forward to that next few weeks, as well as our AGM this Friday and our P12 Summit next Friday. So a busy little 2 weeks for CEP. That's all for me. Back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Mark. That really, truly is exciting. But the extension into business sponsorship and support, that's fantastic. As usual, the session today will take exactly 1 hour and will conclude at 5 p.m. The program is being recorded, so there will be the opportunity for you to re-watch the session online, as well as all previous sessions. If you have a question, please include it in the chat box, and we will endeavour to respond during the course of today's program. Towards the end of the session, there will be a survey in the chat box, and we encourage you all to complete it so that we can continue to get feedback on these sessions. I'll hand now over to Tess Kelly, who will introduce our guests and facilitate today's discussion. Thank you, Tess.
Thank you, Gary. Today's discussion is centering on the value of connectedness in rural learning environments, and that's a subject very near and dear to my heart as the principal of Talbot Primary School. We've got 2 fabulous people that are going to present today. So firstly, we'll hear from Jess Robertson, and after Jess, we'll hear from Emma Doyle. Now, I know, Jess, you're going to talk us through your history and what you've achieved in this area, so I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Tess, and thanks for having me on this special topic. It's very dear to my heart. It's been a passion for quite a lot of years now. I have started working with children for many, many years, from education setting, from infancy, from a psychology lens, from neurodiverse and trauma. I've worked with families, I've worked in schools and with teachers for over 25 years now. And yes, I'm old enough. I know I look younger than my age, so I always get that, which is a great thing. It's probably why I get so connected with children really easily, but I have immersed myself with the world of children, especially with this fast moving world. Connection is the main point of my work now. And with schools, with families, I've worked in rural environments. I've lived in rural environments over the years, and I've worked across Australia with different types of schools. There's always connection first is always the key to opening up learning, opening up collaboration, opening up families being open to being a part of the process, to helping their children along their education journey as well. Country schools and rural schools do it so, I don't want to say better than metro schools, but the heart of community is always at the forefront of what you all do. And that is something admirable. It's something to utilize, but it can also come with the double-edged sword with extra pressures as well, because you're wearing multiple hats and you're trying to be a multiple disciplinarian educator, and you might have multiple year levels to handle, and families in rural go through some heavy things. Historically, they've got different seasons, they've got different travel obstacles, they've got lots of great things in the community, but there's also massive things to work with the families as well that you've got to hold space for, as well as the curriculum. So I've worked alongside a lot of different types of schools over the years in Australia and New Zealand, and I've created a course as well, a program, because distance is a problem. Going into for these professional developments, professional learning, and specialised accessibility to specialised services is probably a bit more challenging, as you've experienced. So I've developed multiplying myself without having to have people come to me. So I come to you online, and I work. Also, I've got my program set up that helps connection first lens, relationship building lens with families and children, and also educators and children working systemically. The reason I've done it online is to get rid of that extra layer, and it's accessible. I'm accessible online. I also create bespoke programs as well. So every school has their own things. You're not all carbon copies. Where you live, rural, is still different to another town. So really making sure that I get to know the school's heart and the core of what they need. And then I create from there to make something that actually will benefit the whole school system. So that is generally what I do at the core of my work in a nutshell. There's obviously more nuances to it, but I've sort of put everything that I know to provide that connection first relationship lens approach, and understanding the nuances that happen in rural schools as well. So I'll just share a bit more information now. Okay, we can see that now. I'm hoping everyone can see that one.
Yep, all good. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you so much. So my main focus and what I know is the core of learning is for connection in the classroom to begin. So without connection to the adult that leads the room, the children, the internalisers and externalisers do feel very lost and disengaged socially and academically. So as teachers, educators, leaders, principals, you've all seen this before. And to find how to reach them with micro moments over long extended frameworks is really important, because your time is limited. And the trust that's built can be done in small increments of time as well, not big extra things to add to your already curriculum heavy plates every day. So as I spoke about my history in homes, classrooms and communities, so this is what the baseline of my work has been about. And I wanted to create more, how to help more on a larger scale. So that's what my programs do. It's one-to-many, not one-to-one. I've worked one-to-one in many spaces, I still do. I work directly with families as well, and whole classrooms also, and schools. So I still keep my finger on the pulse in many realms to make sure that I can provide the best up-to-date information on what's going on, even with technology, which has changed child development and how they perceive the outside world as well. So I'm very much into the tech space and how that affects childhood and engagement also. So in this world, with the rural communities, I understand the distance from support, how teachers are actually carrying too much most days, and I'm very cautious about burnout. So a lot of it is adult-centered, the work I do, which stream and flows onto the whole classroom and the whole school. Families can be hard to reach, even though you're very community orientated. They're very busy with their farm life, with whatever they're doing in their own workspace. So that extra stress does flow into the school because the children come with that heaviness from their family homes as well. So there is both sides to the strong community setting. Children without that shared anchor of support get lost in the systems. And the strengths that you all have where you live are something that we can work with. And it's not a deficit at all. There is so much strengths there that we can work with as well. The limited access to extra programs, as I spoke about before, is something that I am aware of. And that is why the travel, the extra cost, that everyone needs to come into the CBD for certain programs. This is to meet your school entirely online where you're at, and timings, whether it's pre-recordings that get sent out, whatever works with your timetabling as well, that's what we work with too. I do want to stress, even though I've got a psychology background amongst all my other degrees, it's not therapy. I'm very cautious that I'm not training teachers and educators and schools to be therapists at all. And therapy does have a place, but it's not in a setting that's for the whole school environment. It's meant to be more of a mentoring space that aligns with building, upskilling, and empowering the adults around the child, and the child to be within the classroom setting as their true selves. So I use a relational lens. We use some micro moments, connection first at every point. So connection over correction is the main aim for every interaction, to build that relationship and trust. And it is seen that all of these approaches end up with the child ready to learn, even the ones that have shown internalizing, externalizing, dysregulation, the ones that have had some school refusal going on. Over time, having this lens has ensured that the child feels safe, secure, and supported in their environment, which opens up their ready to learn brains and their engagement. So this is real experience in real classrooms in real communities over decades now. I've put this all together in one package because I've lived in these spaces. So I've been directly in classrooms, whether that is working with the teacher live in the moments that are tricky in their teaching, or I've been in front of the classroom producing some sales sessions and empowerment sessions and anything that's relatable to the school setting that are having a bit of struggles at that time. Been mentoring the teachers directly, and I've been working with their families as well, whether it's the high trauma families or the families that are struggling with some skill sets to get their child engaged. So I work with a whole system around the child. So the real communities, living and working in those rural spaces, has really opened my eyes to how to adapt the things that work in the larger schools, in the fast-paced metro life, to how it's built in the rural communities. There is a difference and there is a way to speak. It's not that childhood is different as such with the developmental milestones, but their experience of childhood does look different and feel different in a rural community. So in saying that, I've developed 2 programs. These are the ones that I've developed, but as I said before, I've got some bespoke options that can be utilised specifically for the school that I'm speaking to. These ones have been working very well within the school because it's a systemic approach. They're all online. They're all individually logins, led learning. so it's accessible in their time that suits the school or the parents at home. So the relational classroom is the connection first approach, regulation and co-regulation skills, and showing the why and hows. Trauma-informed and neurodiverse inclusive lens, which shows exactly how to reach those children that often find it hard to engage in the school setting, and reaching those quiet and loud children as well. The micro moments is really important because that is what builds the trust slowly over time, and it also makes sure that it's not impacting the curriculum or heavy workload the teachers already carry. And the online section really seems to be supportive and helpful. The parent code is the extra course that's also included in this package, because without the parents having the same language, the same understanding, the before school, the evenings before bed, those skills actually set up their day for success socially, emotionally, and ready to learn. It does start at home, and it's modeled at home and followed through in the classroom setting. So the schools that have empowered their parents have actually made it more community orientated and have actually helped the child understand that the adults are there to support them in the same way. It's the same language. It makes sense to the child. Therefore, their walls are down and their engagement is increased. So these also include quarterly live sessions, or recorded and sent out as well, with Q&As. So I can isolate the pain points of the parents or the teachers that are still ongoing, and we can continue that mentoring as well. So why the whole school and the families? Because the teachers shift first. So you're the leaders of the classroom, the environment, the feelings. You understand when you walk into a classroom, the impact that leader has on the whole school, the whole classroom setting. So it starts with the small shifts with the teachers first, and it flows on there. So if you can think about the hardest child that you've had to deal with in a classroom setting and work with that relationship first, the rest follows. And that's what we work on first. And the families joining the journey, they feel like it's a collaboration, and that can only be a positive impact to your whole school and the child and the whole class. So the children do arrive differently over time as well. When the adults are connected and use connection first lens, the children increase their trust and their understanding of who they are in each environment. The school does change. I've been in many schools that have changed, that have taken this on board and have liaised with each other. They've supported each other as colleagues and understood that the weight that they carry every day can actually be minimized when they understand connection first lens. So the calmer classrooms is always a goal. Calmer classrooms does speak from a buzzword. I do understand that, but it actually is felt when the child feels like they can engage, when the child feels like the adults that support them every day are on board with strategies, conversations, words, and the environment shifts, their walls come down and they are willing to engage socially and emotionally as well. The school refusal has dropped in many schools I've worked with. We do the micro moments for the children that are struggling as well. We don't expect big goals. I know there's improvement, programs that come in place, there's plans. This is all great, but we need to shift the way that adults are connecting first, because that is what's going to change it. And the pressures and the micro moments leading up to the success we're aiming for is really important as well. And this just empowers the teacher in front of the children, because the teachers do carry a lot when it's not going right, when it's not feeling like it's progressing for a child or for some of the members in the classroom. This empowers the teacher first as the adult and the space. So fully online and flexible, whatever you choose to work with me, whether it's individual, whether it's a bespoke, whether some schools actually, the smaller schools, I actually package this so that you could come together collectively as well. Rural schools have less teachers and less students and families. So I understand the outlay for that is really beneficial if you join together with a few schools and are on board together, and we could do this process together with a few at once. So I've done that process as well, which has worked quite well. I'm sure you've got schools that collaborate quite easily together, and that can only enhance your community spirit too. And as I've said, it's building on what you've already have in place. This isn't changing what you already do with connection, with frameworks, with behavior management. But this isn't a behavior management first, this is connection first, because that's where you can reach the children that are showing some signs and giving messages that they're not coping in their day. It's not taking away, it's supporting all those frameworks that you've already done with other programs. I've made sure that these are about the adults. Then it flows on to the children. And it's not that there's good or bad or wrong or right. It's just changing some things with understanding how connection first lens can flow on to your day as well as the child. So if your school might be curious about how to work together, how to partner together, what this could look like in your environments, please reach out and book a 30-minute conversation. There's no obligation. I could talk about this topic forever. It's a passion. So you're never going to take up my time, even if you're just curious to know more, because I'm always happy to be approached. And we can explore what that looks like in your schools or context. I've got my website as well that gives a bit more information. And I've got some other schools you could reach out to and speak to about how that's been feeling in their environment as well, that are happy to have a conversation too. So if you're ready, let's have a conversation and build the connection first lens in your schools. So thank you for your time. And if there's any other questions, please always reach out to me. I'm happy to answer. Don't hesitate. Empowering children on a large scale is my goal now, because the more I help, the better it is for our future, for educators, for teachers, for retention. I'm very cautious about the burnout of staff that I've been seeing over the last, especially 2 years. I could pinpoint of how much, especially the new graduates, are really finding this pivotal point for their career to continue staying engaged as educators, constant learners, and empowering the children in front of them. So, and yeah, any other questions, always reach out to me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jess.
Thank you.
Fabulous. I love the way that you mentioned that in particular to rural communities, that there are those challenges, but you acknowledge that there's wonderful opportunities and strengths within those communities as well, that just come from the culture that they've built up. The readiness to learn for the students is huge. Absolutely huge. And if they're not in that space, you would appreciate that. It is a struggle for the teachers and the staff as a whole. And then you mentioned the parents. It's a whole connection for all of them. So we're going to go and listen to Emma now, and Emma is in the thick of it in the classroom. So Emma, welcome, and I'm looking forward to listening.
Thank you, Tess, and thanks, Jess. I think what came across strongly, Jess, was connection and community, and that's pretty much what we're talking about tonight, so it leads in well to what I'm about to speak about. My name's Emma Doyle. I'm a leading teacher at Wooranna Park Primary School in Dandenong North. You wouldn't know how many times I've had to spell out Wooranna Park School. I've been teaching for about 16 years now. I've been a leading teacher since 2015, and I started at Wooranna in 2025 after completing an internship for unlocking potential principal preparation. And before that, I worked in a large primary school with over 1,200 enrolments. What's really shaped my perspective is, and on this topic, is I grew up in the country. So I grew up predominantly in Merbau North. I'm just going to share you a slideshow to take you down memory lane. And I'm sure you'll tell me if you can't see that. So the value of connectiveness in the rural learning environment made me reflect on my time of growing up in the country. So those of you that are currently in the country might be able to see, oh, where's she been? So this is the Merbau North swimming pool. I remember my prep teacher, Mrs. Hanning, pulling a leech off me on the side of the pool that wasn't heated when we used to walk down there to do our swimming lessons in in term 1. This is Leongatha. I spent time in Leongatha as well, and this is the post office in Leongatha. And also, when I was really young, we lived in a town called Yannick, which is just outside of Niel. And I do remember walking around in bare feet and down to the local milk bar and getting lollies when I could. So I'll go to the next slide. Yeah. So if we're reflecting on my time in the country, I also went to Melbourne North Primary School and Secondary College. I had to actually look up to see if they still had that purple wind cheater, which they do. So the connection and the memories that I sort of had growing up in a small community was really strong. I actually checked it recently. So growing up, I lived in a number of rural communities that I've spoken about. When I think about community, so if we're going to talk about connection, we're talking about community, and it made me reflect on what is connectiveness and what is community. When I think about two events that stand out for me in relation to growing up in Melbourne North, it was the Melbourne North Art Show and the Italian Festival, and especially the slippery pole contest. I'm not sure if they still run it, whether that would pass OH&S, but that was always a highlight annually every year in a small town. What made them special wasn't just the event itself, it was the whole town showed up. So as a student, you were talking about it during the week. You might have had your mum or dad that was on the committee, volunteers, and it was a real sense of pride and shared ownership around those events. That's where my understanding of connectedness comes from. It's about those shared experiences, those relationships, and a common understanding of how we live and support each other. And I've carried that through into the work that I currently do now as well. This is the house that I grew up in. I remember waiting at the front gate every morning for my friend, and we would walk to school together. Those small everyday interactions built really strong connections. And as Jess had mentioned as well, rural settings, communities do that so well. And sometimes you become consciously skilled of the things that you're doing day in, day out to build community and to build connections with your students and staff, as well as the broader community, that you don't realize that those little conversations and those little gestures are the things that matter and stick with students and families over time. It's a shared way of life. And it's also the predictability in the routine. So I was thinking about things like going to feed the horses in the morning before school, and it creates that sense of belonging and common understanding of each other. When we're talking about community, so the question becomes, what does this look like in a school setting? It's about intentionally creating the same sense of belonging within a school. So how can we take what we do in those rural settings and what I remember so fondly of growing up in Melbourne North and apply that into the school setting, because there is so much value in it and the way that we connect in the town. We can look at these connections. I think also Jess mentioned this as well, as the teacher-student connection within the classroom, the peer-to-peer connection, and then the school-to-home connection. And then obviously there's the broader community, which was thinking about sporting clubs and things like that. The department frames this up really well under the high impact wellbeing strategies. And I always like to refer back to this, and especially when working with staff and within schools, that the first one here is build relationships with students. And sometimes when we are busy and there are so many competing demands, it's sometimes going back to the basics of what works, and that is building those relationships with the students. At Wooranna Park Primary School, what we've been working on is a sense of belonging. So Aero actually frames this up really nicely about what is connection, it's belonging, and what is community, it's belonging. So a sense of belonging to one school is referred to as school connectedness, and is the extent to which students feel a part of their school and feel valued and cared for by their school community. So every day we're trying to create that belonging in our own communities and in our schools. This is also framed up. So I've been a curriculum leader for over 11 years, and I'd still go back to connection is key to anything. If you want students to learn, you need that connection. And FISO 2.0 also puts learning and wellbeing at the centre of everything. Just context in relation to Wooranna Park Primary School, the school I'm currently working in, there's 263 students. There is 74% language background other than English. There's 4% Indigenous students, and we run multi-age classroom settings, so composite classes. So for us, building connectedness is intentional. I work alongside a great leadership team and a teaching team, and also ES staff who connect daily with a very diverse community on many different levels and services. So one way that we've approached, when I first came into 2025, we approached connectedness and community was through sport. So for an area that we targeted was 5-6, so in the senior school in a primary school, and we worked closely with the students and the teachers to create participation in sport. So we wanted to aim for 100% participation in sport. So we developed this code of conduct with students that everybody would participate in sport, and there was a no opt-out approach to this. Students were placed in teams with peers that they may not usually interact with the goal of building respect, responsibility and pride. Given the area that we work in, we have a transient community, so sometimes we will have students who are here for a couple of weeks, sometimes we'll have them here for a month, and sometimes they'll stay for a bit longer. So we're always looking at how we can include and be inclusive and form those connections for students that are coming and going as well. We also introduced the expectation around commitment. So students needed to attend training to participate. What was really powerful was that the teachers were just as engaged, and credit to them. They were the most enthusiastic coaching. They were the enthusiastic with supporting the students and building the relationships with the students in a different context. What we found by involving all students and staff, they were always the coaches, but being coached by their teachers and different teachers on that team, is that it created strong connections in the classroom as well, and especially strong connections between students and teachers. What we found was impact in relation to this is our attitudes to school survey showed a growth in connectedness, as the students had indicated through this survey. So we could start to see the intentional focus on it was making a difference, and we are grateful to the commitment from our teachers and the students to ensure we continued to build that community. Part of this was also about building social cohesion, and part of that was so students who may have not been here for a long time, students that may come from a background with English as an additional language, that they could also be included in those teams and make new friends and feel connected to the school and take pride in the community. It is back on that slide, but I'll talk to it here. Most importantly, what we found was the success for the students. So we really committed to the training. Part of that was that we came home with trophies, and we were very excited about this. And if you could have heard the students once they all came back and we were under the rotunda celebrating, you could hear them cheering throughout the school. And that's also started a momentum for the students who have come up from 3-4 this year into 5-6 grades of they want to be part of the sport. They want to be connected to a common goal, and also come home with trophies, of course, but that doesn't always happen. What also stemmed from this is including the NRL. So one of our teams qualified for the Billy Slater Rugby Tag Festival, and they loved that the NRL was coming in to coach them. Also, we've brought out the Melbourne Victory Soccer Club for them to be coached by them. And they just wanted to come out and work with our kids. And the kids really appreciated these opportunities within the community, and also connected them to our school values, which are being respectful, responsible and safe. So then the question's always asked, well, how can we take what we did in the sport and how can we apply this into setting up classrooms for success and creating a learning environment and a sense of belonging? So this was the first out of the high impact wellbeing strategies that I mentioned before about building relationships with students. So we placed a strong emphasis on this and going deep with that connection. So it's about going beyond how is your weekend with the students. It's really knowing those students and remembering things about them and building trust. It's about going beyond that, how is your weekend? So when you're on yard duty, ask the students about what they like and remember those things, remember the pivotal moments in their life. So when you come back and have another conversation with them, that they feel valued, that you've remembered what they've said. And I guess it comes back to when I was talking about growing up in the country, and there's sometimes those things that you do and you're not consciously skilled that you do, that you just ask someone how you're going and you slow down and you're actually listening to them in the main street talk about how are they actually going and applying that same skill set within the school environment as well. It's really important that we allow time for this in our classrooms. So at the start of every year, we plan for setting up for success. So although it might sound really basic, it's actually planning to set up routines and it's setting them up for success. Like, how do we line up at the front door? How do we come in and sit down? How do we get maths materials out? So providing that predictability within the classroom and those routines helps with creating that orderly environment, and also the students feel connected to what they're about to do. Just back to building routines, expectations, the partnership with home, which Jess, you spoke about beautifully, and also just know your students, know what they're up to and going beyond the learning with that part as well. Also thought I'd mention that the department's I've already mentioned, but high impact wellbeing strategies and positive classroom management strategies are great resources to refer to when planning classrooms for success. And although I've always run in classrooms planning, setting up for success in the classroom, it is something that you embed in every day. So for example, we have someone in the classroom who answers the phone and they love that role, and it gives them a sense of pride in that they're contributing to that classroom community. So assigning those classroom roles and how important it is. And if you ever have students that come back and visit you, they won't remember, and here's coming from a maths leader, they won't remember the maths I taught them, but they'll remember them that I assigned them a role to hand out the equipment, or that they were the phone monitor, or they used to go and empty the bins. So it's about that community and what really matters to them and how they take responsibility in that community in the classroom. So to finish, the work is really about being intentional about those small moments, but those small moments add up. So it's not always the lesson that you're going to teach about setting up for success, like what are our routines, but it's acknowledging when students on a day-to-day basis do those things. In diverse school settings, a sense of community doesn't just happen. We have to actively build it every day. And through relationships, shared experiences, and consistent routines, we create this feeling of belonging and a safe, respectful, responsible learning environment for the students. Because the students feel connected, they feel safe and valued and understood. And when that happens, they are far more ready to engage, learn, and to succeed. So we really need that connection as teachers with the students and with home, and also their peer-to-peer connection. So setting up opportunities for students to do that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Emma. Clearly, like, you gave us some great resources. The department have some great resources there and the examples of how you've put it into practice, but it's your passion actually for connection and community that really showed through. One thing that's come up that you both had in common was mentioning those micro moments or those micro opportunities that you can cash in on to build those relationships and build that trust. I think being the principal at Talbot, what also came through, Jess, going back to yours, that we're so small by ourselves that we have limited staff or limited capacity, but that's when you can branch out into your clusters or into building bigger communities for your teachers and your staff, as well as the kids through camps, or making sure they know each other before they go to high school and things like that, to make sure that community connection carries on past your school doors. I'm wondering, Jess, if there's anything that you picked up from Emma's passion and her current work at her school that you'd like to comment on.
Well, it just aligns with everything that I'm passionate about. So I really appreciated hearing her perspective in her role and how she filters that in through her community for the school. And very, very, even though it's connection, you are so child focused and you really see the world of education through the lens of a child, which is really interesting, with the nuances of the nationalities as well, and understanding that that actually is such a big, important, key aspect to work with, to make them feel more stronger belonging than ever before, because culturally they're coming from such a diverse range of expectations and traditions, and the way they speak, the way they eat, the way they communicate, the way they engage with others that aren't family members. And you're bringing them together with something that is so, it doesn't need words. It's just like play is a universal language, so is sport. And you're doing it with an age appropriate standpoint. All the younger early ones, playfulness, that is something that you, doesn't matter if you speak English or not, they understand play, just like you understand a smile, what that means universally. And that's the same as what you're doing with sport. And you're also making sure that you're hitting keynotes of people that are the children that are feeling disconnected and dysregulated with movement and connection, without having the pressure of having a face-to-face conversation or Q&A. So that is a really beautiful thing that you're really instilling, and also bringing in all your country childhood. It's very much showing that community and connection is huge with you, and that comes from a country environment. I have to be a bit biased. I've lived in one, so I understand. That's really picked up from childhood there, and that freedom to just be who you want to be and run the fields and be in nature without the hustle and bustle is significant. You've brought into your school. So yeah, I guess I could keep talking to you about what you do, because I think it's phenomenal, but I better stop. But yeah, that's the baseline of what I picked up. So thank you for sharing.
Jess, I do have a question for you.
Sure.
I'll use my community as an example. Within our parent body, we work really hard and have genuine connections with our families, which we value. But we have parents in sort of two groups. They're either low in confidence due to their schooling experiences or their memories of going to school, or they're in the other bucket and they're very trusting of the education department and they really don't mind what we do as long as the kids come home happy. Like, do you have any advice on either of those sort of buckets to strengthen those relationships further?
Well, to strengthen them is to understand that a lot of adults still have wounded inner child going on, as what you were saying, their school experiences have come into this. I do a lot of work with parents about letting go of their experience, because that's an old blueprint. It actually doesn't exist in today's society. And to talk about that honestly and openly, that it's important not to transfer that into your children's experience, because it could never be the same. It's just like this generation now has never known a world without screens, ever. So how can you compare your decades ago childhood teaching experience, teacher rapport, education based on what today looks like? It's not even on the same playing level. So normally I would enhance what childhood looks like from the child's lens these days. The strengths and things that are different, I would highlight that to families in general and have that conversation. And then I would bring in about being kind and caring about what your experience was, and to leave that where it was, because your child needs fresh eyes, a fresh perspective, and we want you involved like no generation before. Have that door open and make sure they know they matter in this process. Really let them see that whatever engagement they want to have is important. Their voice is important. How they feel when they walk through the gate is going to be transferred to their child next to them. their child feels it. So what do you want your child to walk in the gate as? You need to show up as that too. They're watching what you do, not listening to what you say.
Yeah,
So be my
very good advice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Emma, do you have any final comments before we throw to our next speaker?
Not really. Just thank you, Jess. I learnt some things tonight too, listening to you speak. And thank you to everyone in the country who are running rural schools and wearing a million hats on a day-to-day basis.
Beautiful. Thank you both very much. Mark and Andrew Dalgleish, I'm going to throw to you two now. Thank you.
Thanks, Tess. And thanks to Emma and Jess. Emma, thank you. I see on LinkedIn you announced your presence here today and tagged us in, so we appreciate that. I just saw when you had the Billy Slater comments in the rugby, I just saw a great opportunity to say it's the one sport I don't see done much in Victorian schools, but touch football in Victorian schools as a PE subject is such an amazing sport because it's so foreign to so many of the kids, and some of the real gun footballer boys struggle with the whole backwards thing. So it actually puts it on a level playing field. It's one of the more interesting sports to teach in a Victorian school because it's quite foreign to those with AFL background, and it's which makes it fun. So I just saw that opportunity, and Jess, you certainly did downplay yourself. I see on your website you've been on Today's Show and done 10Xs and been the Daily Telegraph. But I do love your line, my work has always been what sits beneath the behaviour. Just love that. There was a visiting teacher in the West years ago who's since passed on, but his great line was, when a child tells you to F off, if all you hear is the F word, you've missed the opportunity to learn about what's really going on. Andrew knows the individual I'm talking about. He used to ride a Harley and have a very long beard. So
I do.
Yeah. Anyway, Andrew, look, over to you. Now, first of all, the VPA has a new podcast out, Connected, United, Empowered. You correct me anything when I'm wrong. So we'd just love to hear about that. But don't talk too long because we also want to ask you a few questions about what you like to listen to. I was under the grill last week and it's your turn this week. But anyway, over to your the VPA podcast first.
No worries, Mark. And can I firstly just thank Jess and Emma for what they've presented and spoken about. As a student of a very small primary school of 18 total, which is no longer open, a small country school, I used to take my children there when I went and visited the family farm, a little place called Wycliffe in the Western District. Bluestone School is still there at the top of the hill. I now take my grandkids past there and they just look at me and go, "You're kidding, that is not a school." I go, "It was." So incredibly passionate about the work that occurs in our rural schools and that absolute centrality to the community. And Emma, when I heard you talk around the intentionality of how you connect the community, it just resonated on a number of ways. Certainly, Mark mentioned the VPA call to arms. It's Connected, United, Empowered, and we do talk about that importance of connection as a community of school leaders and how we work together. Look, Mark, thanks for the opportunity to chat this evening. We have launched a podcast, and we did that late last year with a bit of a view of how do we get and share the stories of our school leaders. Every school leader has a story. They talk about their journey into education, their journey into leadership. And there are so many unique discussions that we could have. An organisation called Teamcast have supported us in doing this. Now, Teamcast have podcast equipment that's available for schools to either purchase, hire, and use, where they have students leading podcasts. You may or may not have seen in the news, or it might have been the Herald Sun a couple of weeks ago, and then it was on the Today Show, Elwood Primary School, sharing the work that the students were doing about their podcast. That's how they deliver their newsletter to their community. It's led by students. And it's such a powerful forum. We all know how much families love to hear and or see what their children are doing. It gives students great agency, the opportunity to talk, to speak about what they're doing, to be a little bit creative, have a little bit of fun. And the team or the group at Teamcast will work with schools around how you may be able to do that. If you can't afford it, perhaps go along and do some work with some of your local businesses who might like a little bit of a plug and get them to help pay for. But our podcast has been really clearly giving school leaders the opportunity. We're looking at diverse school leadership experiences. The first podcast we launched was one of our assistant principals, Paul Hetherington, who is the campus head of Cherry Creek, part of Parkville College. Now, those of you who know Parkville College, it is a custodial school with our young, I'll say offenders for want of a better word. Now, Paul spoke so deeply and passionately about the unconditional positive regard that he leads and works with his staff in educating these young people who have been incarcerated for, at times, crimes that we would be horrified with. We had to be careful. We worked with the Department of Justice, the Education Department, to make sure we were not going to be breaching any confidentialities or anything. One of the things that occurred from that, because Paul and his principal, Anne-Marie, had been struggling to, or executive principal, had been struggling to attract teachers. Within a week, he had 2 people apply for the position because they heard Paul talk about the work they do and the impact that they have. And it just had such a positive resonance from there. Nicole Richards spoke on our next one, and I mentioned Elwood Primary School. Nicole was one of the finalists of the Principal of the Year recognition last year, and Ari, her assistant principal, and they spoke deeply and passionately about well-being for young people and that connection and the work that they do in leading. The Principal of the Year, Michael McLean, who, full disclosure, is also a VPA state councillor, was the next guest. And Michael spoke about his journey. Now, Michael's journey is not a traditional go to school, go to university, teach, and then lead. Michael actually did not enter school teaching and or leadership until much later into his career. In fact, he worked in business, cleaning, he worked internationally, high-flying business person, and then decided, no, this is what I'm passionate about. He actually spoke, and I had no idea about what he was doing, but he spoke about establishing beehives in his school. And I'm going, risk management alert. But he spoke about how he did it and how it connected the young people and the community and so on as part of that work. Again, just some outstanding sharing of what he does as a school leader. Beck Spink, who received a VPA study award a couple of years ago, used that to develop a strategy around providing school lunches in an incredibly multicultural community. A brand new school. She visited overseas, she worked with those. But then she went down a journey and spoke about how she engaged the community, how she developed employing teachers in a brand new school, getting them to video themselves, not just the standard approach to job advertisements and interviews and so on. We've had people come in as far as the executive of the Australian Government Primary Principals Association talk about their advocacy work. And share what they do with members and also our member advisors. So we're using it as a platform to really connect people and share. And over the coming months and weeks, months and years, we want to be able to speak to principals around similar what you're doing here, Mark, sharing their knowledge, sharing their experience. And I do understand that the podcast structure will eventually work into even a vodcast or a video cast. So it can have that video component if people are comfortable doing it. So again, it's something that we were probably a little late jumping into as an association, but it's taken off. It's interesting when I look at the analytics and I see how much it's being listened to overseas, how much impact and feedback that we get from people saying, hey, great, we love to hear the positive stories about education that educators will share and why they do the work they do and the impact that they have. So, that's our intention, and we want to keep driving that really, really strongly to give principals a voice as well. Jess spoke about and Emma spoke about student voice and agency. Very rarely principals get the opportunity for voice and agency, and I'll say in a positive manner, but that's what we're looking at doing.
Thanks, Andrew. Got about 2 minutes left, and I know you make a lot of phone calls in your driving, but I'm sure there are times when you get off the phone. We're just really interested in what
But Mark, and I've had this discussion. I actually stopped listening to talkback radio because I would find I'd get to where I was going and I was so angry and I was frustrated, and I started musing. I go, no, there's got to be better things to listen to. Look, and I've got a really strange list. I'd say I like to listen to true crime style podcasts, believe it or not. And luckily for me, I haven't been exposed to any of that trauma. The work of Gary Jubilant through I Catch Killers, Secrets We Keep. If anybody has listened to the Secrets We Keep podcast, there's a series of them, and they cover off on things from the Russian spy dramas back through Australia's history. They talk. One of them is in relation to the wheat board in the Middle East. One is to do with one of the Geelong church groups. There's some really intriguing listening and understanding the journey of other people and just what impact it has on their lives. Now, when you listen to someone like Gary Jubilant, who was an investigative detective, talk to either victims of crime and understand more about the investigative nature of what they do. Look, he even talks to coroners and understanding some of the work. I know it sounds a bit morbid, but it's a world that is just so foreign to me, and interested in understanding more of that type of work as well, and the respect that sometimes we don't give our police or our investigators and the challenges that they face.
Thank you, Andrew. I just find it really interesting, a bit like a fly on the wall, listening to people explain what they listen to. I do know that you are a regular listener to the 2023 VPA from the Vault 30-minute interview with Andrew Dalgleish. I know you listen to that one regularly, but it was nice of you not to add that. Look, Gary's got a couple, or at least one that he wants to...
Grand Final, Mark. That's about the regular replay that I would listen to.
Gary, I know Lisa's got one that I'm going to investigate that he just told me earlier, but and I haven't listened to the Goons in the last week. I will get there, Gary. But over to you to wrap up today.
Thanks, Mark. Look, I found it fascinating. We all know the advantages of learning in small rural settings and the connectedness that we have. But I was glad that we touched on the more marginal kids, and I think that perhaps needs to be explored a little bit, because I think in small rural settings, it's impossible to hide if you're marginalised in some ways. So I really would like to explore what Jess was talking about in her program for the more marginalised student. As to podcasts, I just like to suggest The Rest is History is known as one of the most popular podcasts in the world, and that would be a wonderful resource for teachers and for students. I just wanted to remind people that the survey is now in the chat box, so please complete it before signing off today. The feedback is important to us. And a reminder that a recording of today's session will be sent out to you, along with next week the recording of session 3, part 1, which will be recorded and sent out. Therefore, all that is left to say really is to thank you to all the people who contributed today, and please join us on Wednesday the 25th for the second part of that 2 series. Detailing support for small schools.
Gary, I just want to interrupt. I just want to mention next week was going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, but now those who join Wednesday will just get a copy of Tuesday's recording. That's just because of the stop work action of the AU. We didn't think it was appropriate to run a PD online session on that day. So that'll come out as a part one in the 2-part recording, but part 2 will be live on Wednesday. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark. I thought I said that that the session 3, part 1 will be recorded and sent out. But please join us on Wednesday, the 25th, the second part of that 2-series session, detailing the support for small schools. Mark, I'm sorry I can't be with you for the AGM on Friday, but I wish you, I hope that it all goes well and that everyone has a really good week, and look forward to seeing people on Wednesday, the 25th, second part of the 2 series. Thank you.